Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, told newsmen that he might soon be able to visit Ukraine's Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, currently under Russian control, as an agreement with Russia is very, very close. This is as concerns are growing over the scheduled trials of Ukrainian POWs in Mariupol. According to the head of Kiev's regional state administration, two Russian rockets hit communities near Ukraine's capital, Kiev, overnight into Thursday. No injuries or infrastructure damage were reported. The number of casualties in a Russian attack on a train station in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region on Wednesday have risen to 25. In the meantime, U.S. President Joe Biden is set to speak with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to update him on U.S. arms shipments and congratulate him on Ukrainian Independence Day. The following report takes a look at the damages caused by the attack on the train station.
A Russian missile attack has killed civilians and set a passenger train on fire in eastern Ukraine on the country's Independence Day. In a video addressed to the United Nations Security Council on Wednesday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said the attack set fire to train carriages in Chaplin, a town of about 3,500 people in the Dnipropetrovsk region. He said, quote, "Rescuers are working, but unfortunately, the death toll could rise."
День незалежності України, наша незалежність не завершується.
President Zelensky's aide later said Russian forces had shelled Chaplin twice. There was no immediate response from Russia, as it denies targeting civilians. The United States has condemned the attack in a tweet by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The attack came after President Zelensky had warned that Russia may try to do something particularly nasty to disrupt celebrations as Ukraine marked the 31st anniversary of its independence. Wednesday also marked the 6-month point in the war. Residents of the capital, Kiev, which has been largely spared in the recent months, woke up on Wednesday to air raids, but no immediate raids followed. Russian bombardments were reported in the country's east, west, and central areas, with the deadliest reported attack at the train station. Russia's defense minister, speaking on Wednesday, claimed the slow pace of Moscow's military action was due to what he said was an effort to spare civilians. He also criticized the US and its allies for continuing to pump weapons into Ukraine, saying the aid is dragging out the conflict and increasing casualties. Russian forces have repeatedly targeted civilian areas in the cities, including hospitals and the Mariupol theater, where hundreds of people were taking shelter. At Kiev's Maiden Square, thousands of residents posed for pictures next to burned-out Russian tanks put on display. Many revelers ignored the sirens and took to the streets to celebrate their nation's independence.
Outgoing UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said households across Europe have to endure the cost of living crisis to counter Russian aggression. He made this statement during a visit to Ukraine. Mr. Johnson said the West must stay the course on Ukraine despite rising living costs driven by the war. He said while energy bills were high, the people of Ukraine are paying in their blood for Russia's evils. Mr. Johnson's visit to the capital Kiev was to mark Ukraine's Independence Day. As a close ally of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Mr. Johnson was making his third visit to Ukraine since Russia invaded 6 months ago. Let's talk this through by speaking with a global affairs analyst, Kunle Falowo. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. What's your initial reaction to the Russia railway station strike on the day marking 6 months since Moscow's invasion began? What impression did you get?
Thanks for having me. So it's a crazy situation. Like you rightly mentioned, it's 6 months into the Russian invasion, and yet another second attack in that rail station. And what they're saying, according to the officials, are they're simply saying the railway station was simply targeted because the Ukrainians were transporting war materials and military personnel to the battleground, and they had to attack them so they wouldn't, score any success or any major success. So that was their excuse for attacking that railway station. Being that as it may, of course, civilians were also part of, people that were inside, the train that got attacked by the Russian military. This is unfortunate. The European Union has come out to condemn this because, as part of the principles of war, they shouldn't be targeting civilians, vulnerable people, kids, children, older people. These ones are supposed to be spared, but as it is, the war is nasty, and unfortunately, this is part of the problem that will continue to be seen and experiencing as time goes by until the war is finally over.
Yeah, Ukraine actually spent Wednesday marking its annual Independence Day. Mr. Zelensky had previously said Russia might do that Russia actually might do something cruel to disrupt the celebrations. How desperate is Vladimir Putin's determination to turn Ukraine on its head?
That's a good question. It's very desperate at this point. Don't forget, he came into the war thinking it was going to be an all-out defeat instantly, almost instantaneously, and unfortunately, that wasn't happening. He thought because they annexed Crimea without any fight from the Ukrainians in 2014, it would be easy for him to go ahead and just take the entire country. Unfortunately, that is not happening.
Yeah.
Because there's a pouring international support for Ukraine, and also I like to remind everybody watching that this is not just a war fought just by Ukrainians. There's so many countries. Far and near supporting the Ukrainian military personnel that is helping the Ukrainians wage this war and continue with this battle. Having said that, just recently, I think 24 hours ago, Russian president has also signed a decree increasing drastically the number of military personnel that will be joining the war at the battlefield from 175,000 to a whopping 1.5 million, which will be taking effect in January. And this is a pointer that the war is really far from over.
Well, looking at Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who appeared in Kiev on an unannounced trip to show his country's support, announcing £54 million in new military aid. That would be his last visit to the warring country as Prime Minister, though. But how has other countries of the world reacted to this war? Because some countries, such as India, China, think it's the West that's escalating the crisis, the same of the same. What do you think?
Well, there's always going to be a divide. There's always going to be some people supporting the left and some people supporting some other countries supporting the right. And don't forget, this is more like a proxy war because there are so many countries supporting the Ukrainian fight, and this is the battle for the heart of the Western civilization. This is another cruel war right after the Second World War. So this is a major fight. And like I rightly mentioned, there's so many countries behind the Ukrainian people, and they're fighting for their freedom, they're fighting for their democracy. And Russians on the other side, it's a rich country with gas and materials, and they're also having some form of support and sympathizers, but they're not as much as what the Ukrainians are getting. And so many people, as a matter of fact, the United States also plans to send additional $3 billion to Ukraine to continue with the onslaught. As a matter of fact, there's still some more weapons and training that will be continuing to pour out from the United States.
Right, follow up very quickly before I let you go. Russians and Ukrainians were family. They used to be families before Vladimir Putin decided to put a wedge between the two countries. And now Ukrainians refer to their former families, Russians, as terrorists. How difficult or easy would it be to mend fences when things eventually settle?
This is going to be a long battle for reconciliation because there's a, serious and a strong wound that it's going to be hard to heal for generations to come. Don't forget, there are still some Russians living in Ukraine. It's like you rightly very well mentioned, there are families on both sides. That there's, there are families and they're related. So, and I also like to mention that some part of Ukrainians are also supporting the Russians, and same as the Russians, also some of them support the Ukrainians. But this is going to be a wound that is not going to heal anytime soon because there's so many people that have lost their lives and families and source of income and livelihood and properties worth billions of dollars have been destroyed due to this invasion.
Well, global affairs analyst Kunle Falowo, thank you so much for joining us from the United States.
My pleasure.